He did not come in the morning. That felt important. Morning belonged to the routines I had built on my own. Coffee, light through the window, the quiet agreement between my body and the day. I would have noticed if he had come then. It was late afternoon when I heard the sound. Not a knock, footsteps on the porch. I did not stand immediately. I waited. That, too, was new. The steps paused. Then the knock came, soft, almost uncertain. Not the sound of someone arriving, the sound of someone asking. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there, with nothing in his hands. No clipboard, no boxes, no purpose he needed to explain. He looked the same and different. "I hope this isn't a bad time," he said. His voice was familiar, but I heard it differently now. Not as interruption, not as relief, just as presence. "It's not," I said, and I meant it. He stepped inside and stopped, as if waiting for the house to decide something. I noticed that too. "You can come in," I added. He nodded and did. The door closed behind him with the same soft sound it always made. The house did not react. Neither did I. We stood in the living room for a moment. No rush to speak. No apology offered. The silence between us was not empty. It was respectful. "I didn't want to assume," he said finally, "after the other day." I understood what he meant. He had given me space, and I had taken it. That felt like something worth protecting. "I've been settling," I said. He smiled just slightly. "That sounds right." We sat, not close, not far. Two people who had learned where their edges were. Outside, the light was already fading. I noticed that I did not feel surprised by his return, nor did I feel rescued. His presence did not fill the space inside me. It joined it. Daniel looked around the room slower than before. "Your house feels different," he said. I considered that. "So do I." He did not ask what had changed. He did not need to. Some things announce themselves without explanation. We talked about ordinary things, the weather shifting, the maple tree losing another branch, a neighbor moving away. Words passed between us without weight, and because of that, they mattered. At one point, he stood and walked toward the window. "I won't stay long," he said. "I just wanted to check in." I believed him. And I believed something else, too, that he would not disappear again without saying why. That felt like trust. When he left, the house returned to its quiet, but it was not the quiet of before. It was not waiting. It was simply there. I stood by the door for a moment after he was gone, not replaying the conversation, not searching for meaning, just noticing how my body felt, steady. I realized then that something important had happened, not because he had come back, but because I had not needed him to. He came again 2 days later, not at the same hour, not with the same certainty, but with the same care. This time, I did not wait behind the door. I was already in the kitchen, rinsing a cup, when I heard the knock. It was softer than before, as if he remembered that the house no longer needed to be announced to. I dried my hands slowly. There was no urgency. When I opened the door, Daniel stood with a small paper bag. "I brought bread," he said, "from the place on the corner. It's nothing special." I took the bag from him. The warmth had already faded, but the gesture remained. "Thank you," I said, and that was enough. We sat at the table, not across from each other this time, at an angle. It felt less like a conversation and more like shared time. He tore the bread in half and placed one piece near my plate without comment. I noticed how naturally the movement came to him, as if he had done this before and trusted that it would be accepted or declined without consequence. I ate. So did he. For a while, we said nothing. I realized that I was not waiting for him to speak. That, too, was new. "I was thinking about what you said," he said eventually, "about settling." I nodded. "I didn't know that was something I needed," I said, "but it was." He smiled, not as agreement, but as recognition. After lunch, he offered to wash the dishes. I let him. The sound of water running filled the space easily. I did not hover. I did not correct the way he placed the cups on the rack. Trust, I was learning, did not require instruction. We moved to the living room and sat again, this time closer, not close enough to touch, close enough to notice warmth. Outside, a car passed. Inside, nothing needed to happen. I watched him from the corner of my eye, the way his hands rested on his knees, the way his shoulders relaxed when he forgot to hold them up. He looked like someone who had learned how to be careful without becoming rigid. I understood that kind of learning. "Do you mind if I come like this sometimes?" he asked, just to sit. I considered the question, not because it was difficult, but because it was new. "Yes," I said, "I think that would be all right." The words settled between us without shifting anything else. We did not mark the moment, no smile held too long, no breath taken too deeply. Some agreements do not need ceremony. He stayed until the light changed. When he stood to leave, he did not apologize for the time he had taken. He did not promise to return. Both felt respectful. At the door, he paused. "I like how quiet your house is," he said. "It feels honest." I nodded. So do I. After he left, I returned to the chair by the window. I did not replay the afternoon. I did not measure it against the days before. I simply noticed that my body felt the same way it had before he arrived, centered. That evening, I cooked dinner without thinking about whether I would mention it to him later. I ate without imagining another plate. The quiet did not feel interrupted. It felt shared. Before bed, I stood in the hallway again. This time, I did not ask myself how I felt. I already knew. Something in my life had shifted its weight, not toward him, not away from myself, but into a balance that did not ask to be named. The morning after Daniel came to sit, I noticed myself reaching for 2 cups. I stopped, not out of disappointment, out of awareness. The second cup remained on the shelf. I took one. That felt right. I carried the mug to the table and sat down, letting the quiet return without resistance. It came easily now, not as something to endure, but as something that knew where it belonged. I thought briefly about the afternoon before, about the way Daniel had asked instead of assumed, about how nothing in me had rushed forward to meet him. That absence of urgency felt like trust. I moved through the day without naming it. I folded laundry. I watered the plant near the window. I wiped the counter twice, simply because I wanted the surface to feel smooth beneath my hand. These actions had no audience. They did not require explanation. At midday, I stepped outside and walked farther than I had before. Not far enough to make a plan, just far enough to feel the rhythm of my steps settle into something steady. The sidewalk felt familiar. The houses watched quietly. I passed the bench without sitting down. I did not need it that day. As I walked, I realized something gently surprising. I was not thinking about Daniel, not avoiding him, not dismissing him, simply not centered on him. That felt like a kind of success I had not known how to aim for. When I returned home, the house received me without comment. I closed the door and stood for a moment, noticing the way my breath slowed as soon as I crossed the threshold. This space had learned my shape. I belonged here, without effort. In the afternoon, I opened the notebook again. I did not write about him. I did not write about the past. I wrote about the weather. One sentence, nothing poetic, just an observation. The act felt grounding. Later, as the light shifted, I realized I had begun to notice myself differently, not with judgment, not with concern, with curiosity. How my hands moved more slowly but with intention, how my thoughts arrived without racing ahead of themselves, how silence no longer felt like something that needed to be filled with proof of living. I was living. That seemed sufficient. That evening, Daniel did not come. I did not wonder why. I prepared dinner and ate without distraction. I washed the dishes and left them to dry. I noticed that the quiet felt complete, not because he was absent, because I was present. Before bed, I stood in the hallway and caught my reflection in the mirror. I did not search my face for signs of change. I recognized it instead. This was a face that had learned something quietly important, that change does not need witnesses. As I turned off the light, I understood something I had not put into words before. Whatever this was becoming, it would not be rushed. It would not be announced. It would not ask me to abandon myself in order to welcome someone else. That understanding felt steady. I lay down and closed my eyes. Sleep came without negotiation. The next morning, I woke with the same calm. Nothing had been decided, nothing had been promised, and yet something was already in motion, not toward him, toward myself.